Hey friends, it's Lark. Today I'm going to be doing my May wrap up, even though it is currently now officially over halfway through June. I am not on time, we know this. Even though we are doing my May wrap up today, it is currently June, so happy Pride Month. I already did try to fill this once, so let's see how this goes. May was actually a pretty good reading month for me. I think it was my best reading month yet this year, and I read 7 books, which is pretty amazing for me. We're not going to talk about how many books I used to read 2 years ago because that was a lot more than I do now, but it's fine. I only had 1 DNF this month, which was pretty great. If you haven't watched my last couple of videos, I have been pretty quick to DNF. A lot of my books I give pretty high ratings to because I'm still kind of slowly trying to get out of a reading slump. So if a book is not holding my attention, I will put it down, I will DNF it, I don't care. It doesn't really mean that the book is bad, it's just not really piquing my interest or it's not for me, and I'm still trying to get back into the groove of reading, so yes. Not only was May really good in terms of how many books that I read, but also in quality. 5 out of the 7 books that I read were 5 stars, and I had a 3-star and a 3.75, basically a 4-star, so that's pretty good. I thought about changing up the order that I do my wrap up in, but I think for this month at least, we're just going to keep it the way it is, where I'm doing it in chronological order. So the first book that I read in May was Spoiler Alert by Olivia Dade. This is the book that I gave 3.75, 4 stars to for rounding up. I really liked this. This is a kind of rom-com love letter to fan fiction almost. It centers around this show that only exists in the book, not in real life. It's kind of like a Game of Thrones-esque type show, even though they do actually reference Game of Thrones in the book. So not sure how, take that as you will, but we follow April, and she is huge into this fandom following this TV show and writes fan fiction for it. She's very involved in the community, obviously writing under an alias. Nobody actually knows her real name or face or anything. And she has a really close friend in the community who also writes fan fiction, and they kind of beta read each other's fanfics and have been friends for several years. Skipping forward, she ends up posting a cosplay pic on Twitter, which was very huge for her to do because she is a plus size woman and they normally get a lot of backlash. And that did happen. A lot of people were praising her cosplay, but a lot of people did criticize it. And the main actor of the show, whose name is Marcus, actually found the Twitter thread and commented on it, asking her on a date. She hesitantly accepts and they go on the date. She's not really feeling it, but there was something that kind of just like sparked towards the very end that made her think, maybe we could try this again. And this isn't really a spoiler, spoiler alert, but Marcus is actually the fanfic writer that she's friends with. Neither of them know. It goes from there. This was really fun. I will say that the constant use of pop culture was actually kind of shocking to me, not as like a downfall. It wasn't bad. It just kind of took me a second to get used to. They mentioned Twitter a lot, which whatever, Twitter's huge, but they also mentioned AO3 specifically, which I thought was really, it was just shocking, but it was pretty cool. But I did really enjoy this book. I did think that the characters were really fleshed out. I loved April's confidence and the body positivity. I can't really speak on it personally, but I thought that it was good fat rep, and I've heard a lot of people say that it was good fat rep, and I just loved how April was very comfortable in her own skin. Her only annoyance with it is that other people would like lovingly try to give her advice on what to eat and to work out, and she was just over it. She was like, no, like let me live my life, let me eat what I want and do what I want. So I really did love that, and I loved that Marcus didn't try to do what everyone else did. He didn't try to steer her in healthier directions. He just loved her for the way that she was. My biggest gripe, I guess, about the book, and the reason that I gave it 3.75 instead of say like a 4.5 or a 5-star, is that the pacing was a bit weird, especially the last like half of the book. I did enjoy that we got to see quite a bit of their relationship, because I feel like in a lot of romance novels you get all this build up and then a little bit of the relationship, and then you get the third act conflict, and then the falling out, and then they get together at the end. And while all that did happen, I just felt like the pacing was a bit weird, especially towards the end. It felt very rushed, and I just wish that it had been spaced out a little more. Maybe if we'd gotten, I don't know, even just 30 to 50 more pages, I feel like it would have flowed a little bit better. But other than that, it was a really good read. I still definitely recommend it, and I will be looking for other works from this author. The next 3 books that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about all together because they are books 3, 4, and 5 in a series, and that is the last 3 books of the Heroes of Olympus series. The 3rd book being Mark of Athena, the 4th being House of Hades, and the 5th and final book being Blood of Olympus. I gave these all 5 stars. I am a Rick Riordan stan. We love Uncle Rick in this house. Mark of Athena was a reread for me. However, the other 2 were actually new. I had started House of Hades once and I just never got through it, not because of any faults of the books, just me being awful at marathoning series. But these 2 were new reads for me, and it was just so lovely being back into this world. I've now read the first 3 books twice, but finally finished the series, and I just love this so much. Without spoiling the Percy Jackson of the Olympian series, if you haven't read that, this takes place after the events of the last book, and the first book, The Lost Hero, follows a new cast of characters that we've never met before, and then the second book, Son of Neptune, follows Percy along with 2 characters that we haven't met previously, and then in this book they all come together to really start their journey and their quest, and it's just so amazing. I am obsessed with this series. I'm obsessed with just Percy Jackson in general and his shenanigans and him and Annabeth, and I just love them so much. But basically, Gia has awoken, or she is awakening, and she has risen her sons, the giants, and that is not very good for any demigods involved. So that is definitely not good for Camp Half-Blood, and another camp that we discover exists in the 2nd book. And it was just so lovely, and I'm so glad that I finally finished this series so that I can move on to the Trials of Apollo series, and I recommend this all the time. I cannot recommend it enough. I love Rick Riordan. If you love middle grade or even just love fantasy or mythology, I really recommend this series if you haven't read it. I know it's super popular. I know you've heard of it before. I'm just another voice in the void shouting about it, but it was truly wonderful, and I'm so happy that I finally read it. How many times can I say that? Another 5-star in a series that I've been raving about recently, and that is Heartstopper Volume 3 by Alice Oseman. This series follows 2 boys who are in high school in England. We follow Nick and we follow Charlie. Charlie is out at school as gay. Wasn't really his choice, but he's out now, and becomes friends with a rugby player named Nick, and they form a friendship, and it kind of develops into more of a friendship. Nick realizes that he's not straight like he thought, and it just follows their journey through their relationship, and it's just the cutest, most wholesome thing. I've been raving about this series for a while, and I actually used to read it online before the physical copies were even a thing or even announced. And I just really love Alice Oseman and her work, and I'm so happy that these are finally getting like the recognition and the publicity that they deserve, because they're so amazing and wholesome and cute, and I just know that like this series is what I'm going to grab anytime that I'm feeling down. They're very quick reads. Obviously they're just graphic novels. They're very short. You can read them in one sitting easily. If you're not sure that if you like these or not, you can actually read it online for free. It is still up and it is still updating. I believe it's updating. It might actually be finished, because I know that the 5th volume is going to be coming out probably next year, and it will be the final volume. So I'm not sure if she's completely done writing it yet, or like almost done, but you can read it for free online, or you can support the author by buying these physical copies. The 3rd book was just as fluffy and wonderful as the first 2 books, and I know that in the 4th book, because I read it in June, spoiler, does get a little deeper into some mental health things, and there's a little bit more turmoil and drama, if you will, but this one is just so beautiful and so fluffy, and they go to Paris in this one, and like that's adorable. It's so adorable. My last 5-star read of the month was another series finale, and that is Rule of Wolves by Leigh Bardugo. This is the conclusion to the Nikolai duology, and as far as Leigh has stated, the conclusion of the Grishaverse, because I think she says that she might eventually write a 3rd Six of Crows book, but does not have any immediate plans to. So for now, this is the finale of the world. But this was truly a wonderful finale to the series, and I can't really talk about this book or even this series without spoiling 2 other series, because you probably shouldn't pick up the Nikolai duology if you haven't read both the original Grisha trilogy and the Six of Crows duology, because this just has massive spoilers for both and you'll probably be really confused. Six of Crows follows Nikolai, who is the king of Ravka now, and it also follows Zoya, who is his general. Both of them were in the Grisha trilogy. And then it also follows Nina, who is from Six of Crows, and she is off in Fjorda. And that's really all I can say without spoiling the other series if you haven't read them. But I adore Nikolai. He's one of my favorite characters, not only in this series, but of all time. He's just so like snarky and witty and charming, and I'm obsessed with him and I'm in love with him. I know a lot of people didn't really like King of Scars that much because it is so vastly different from Crooked Kingdom. It's a very slow political book, whereas like the Six of Crows duology is very fast-paced and plot-heavy, where this is definitely more character-driven, and it's very hard to compare the two. So I'm not going to say like, oh, this one is better, or the other one was better, because they are so different. But I did love it basically just as much as Crooked Kingdom, just in very different ways because they're so different. But I really thought this was executed so well. I know that everybody was saying that before, when I was currently reading it, before I had finished it. I saw a couple people, specifically Monica from Monica Kim, and she was saying how it was such a great finale, and I was like probably about that much done with it, and I was just sitting there like, girl, like, are you sure? I'm getting nervous. Like, I was scared. I was scared. It felt like everything was going wrong. But you just have to trust Lee. You have to trust her, trust the process, because this was amazing. And I wish that I could really tell you more about my thoughts on like certain things, but that would be getting into spoilers. So can't do that here, but it was wonderful. And if you've been debating picking up the Nikolai duology and you have read the other series, I definitely recommend it because I do think that it is phenomenal in its own way. Ending on just a bit of a sour note with my lowest rated book of the month, I have a 3-star book, which is still a pretty good rating, but that is Bloom, the graphic novel, and I'm gonna read the authors' names because I'm probably gonna butcher them, but it is by Kevi Panetta and Savannah Ganuccio. Probably saying that wrong. I'm sorry. Let me start with the good. The artwork was stunning. It was beautiful. It was charming. I was obsessed with it. It had those nice blue tones, kind of like the American versions of Heartstopper does. And it was just very like relaxing to read. The first half of it was really wonderful. I loved all the build up between the characters. We follow Hector and Ari. Ari wants to leave the city and pursue his dreams of music with his band, and his parents really want him to stay home and help with the bakery. They think he's being selfish. And we also follow Hector, who is new to the area, and he ends up getting a job at the bakery because he wants to help out. Ari wants to hire somebody else to kind of replace him so that he can leave and follow his dreams. And the two spark a friendship with some bumpiness along the way, but they spark a friendship. Kind of becomes a little bit more than that, of course. So that's it for the good. Unfortunately, this didn't really hit very well for me. The last half of the book, maybe the last quarter of the book, just didn't really do it for me. After all that build up, I just felt that the way they got together was kind of odd, and then just the pacing of the last like 10-15% of the book was super weird, because after all of this build up, they get together really fast and then immediately have their falling out, and then like a time skip, and then they kind of get back together, and it's just like, it was just kind of weird. The pacing was very weird, and I did really like Hector, but Ari kind of annoyed me a lot. I thought he was whiny. I thought he was selfish. I thought he was annoying. I just didn't really like him as a character, and Hector can probably do a little bit better than him. But I will say this, in Ari's defense, there was one point where Hector called him clingy, and I don't think that he was, but I think it was just Hector projecting because his ex was very clingy, so I think he was just kind of putting that onto Ari, but I digress. I did put a review that goes a little bit more in depth in my Goodreads, so I will link that down below if you want to read it. It's not very long, but it did kind of collect my thoughts a little bit better than I'm probably saying them here. But I liked it. I'm glad I read it. Don't worry, I'm glad I read it. But I probably like won't be purchasing it for myself. I just wasn't in love with it. But I know a lot of people have loved this, so maybe you'll like it more than I did. I don't know. Once again, the artwork was absolutely stunning, and I did consider buying it just because it was so pretty. but ultimately it didn't really hit for me, so do with that what you will. All right, that's it for the books that I completed, but really quick, I just wanted to mention the one DNF that I had in May, and I'm actually really sad about this one because I wanted so badly to like it. I didn't get very far in it. I put it down. I just don't think that it was for me. I don't think it was the right time, and I know that I'm not the intended audience for it because it is a YA urban fantasy, and YA urban fantasy doesn't usually hit for me. It's not really something that I gravitate towards, but that is A Dark and Hollow Star by Ashley Shuttleworth. This was pitched as City of Bones meets The Cruel Prince, and I did not like either of those books. So you're probably like, hey, Lark, why did you pick this book up if it was, you know, described as the two books that you don't like? Because it's really gay. It's a very queer book, and I really wanted to like it. However, I put it down because I don't think it's for me. It's probably a fantastic book. I've heard a lot of great reviews. I just don't think that I was the intended audience. And I'm not saying that you can outgrow YA. I just don't think that I've been enjoying YA lately, so I'm kind of taking a step back from it a little bit. Even though I've been reading a lot of middle grade lately, like middle grade has just been hitting different for some reason. But anyway, this follows multiple POVs, and I will say this, in the book's defense, it had an amazing prologue. Like, the first scene that we get follows Alecto, as in, yes, Alecto the Fury, and she is on a trial because her sister, one of the Furies, I forget how to say her name, it's like Tiffany, but Greek, she died, and she was really close to her sister, and so in revenge, Alecto murdered, like, I think a whole ship full of people. So her mom is like, hey, you can't do that, so we're gonna put you on trial, and you're gonna be found guilty, and we're gonna, like, basically destroy you. And she was like, yeah, whatever, that's fine, I don't regret it, like, let me be destroyed, you know, finally peace. And then her mom's like, JK, we're gonna turn you into immortal. So she decides to change her name to Nausicaa. I only know how to say that because I listened to the audiobook. And goes to the mortal world. And that whole scene was just so badass. I would have loved if the whole book was just like that. And then the scene immediately after, I don't even remember too much of the details. I just remember I was following this janitor, and then this like almost like ghost demon kind of dude showed up and was like, hey, like, you know, you're magical, right? Like, you wanna live your life as magical. That was pretty cool. We never saw more of him in the part that I read. I'm sure he shows back up, but I didn't read any more from him. And then there were two other POVs that I don't really remember. One was a girl, and she like had some magic, but not enough to like be a part of the magical world, and so she was on a type of trial as well. And I read two of her point of views, and I just didn't really care for her that much. And then there was another one with these two boys, and one was like, I think rich or royal or something, and the other one was like his friend, and they were probably gonna end up together, which would have been really cute. But I only saw a little bit of them. But I don't know, I wasn't vibing with it, and I liked Nausicaa more when she was Alecto in that first scene. I really, really liked her. I really vibed with her. But then the next chapter where she was just Nausicaa and like living on Earth, I just didn't really like it. I didn't like the writing. It just felt very like typical, like I don't care kind of person. I don't know, it was just off to me. But that's personal. I didn't like it. That doesn't mean that it was bad. I really do think that this book could be phenomenal, and I think that the people who like those type of books will eat this up, and I really wanted to read it and like it, but I didn't want to waste my time reading something that I don't think that I will personally vibe with, therefore I DNF'd it. But if you like YA urban fantasy, you might really, really like it, so I would still hesitantly recommend it. I haven't read enough to really be able to truly recommend it. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know down below what your favorite book that you read in May was, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.